Hey there! If you're tuning into this video, you're most likely a writer embarking on NaNoWriMo this year. So first things first, I'm wishing you a fantastic month full of productivity and inspiration. I hope you're getting started on the right foot, but if you haven't yet gotten your words in for the day, don't worry. This journey isn't about perfection. It's just about getting that novel written. So to give you a bit of more background information about me, I am a professional book editor who formerly worked at Penguin Random House and Macmillan, as well as a top literary agency in New York City. So I know a little bit about the ins and outs of traditional book publishing, and I love to share my knowledge with aspiring authors. I primarily work on novels in the thriller, women's fiction, and historical fiction genres. I've always looked at NaNoWriMo as an amazing accomplishment, and I'm excited to see so many writers participate every year. As an editor, I am truly awestruck by the dedication and focus that it takes to embark on this journey. On my channel, I focus on offering writers publishing advice as well as tips on how to strengthen their manuscripts. So this year, I thought I would compile all my thoughts on NaNoWriMo and hopefully provide you some actionable tips as you head into this month of writing. As I mentioned, I am not a writer by trade, but what I am trained in is how to help writers strengthen their novels. So I'm going to give you the book editor's perspective on NaNoWriMo, which hopefully will be helpful to you if you're looking to eventually pursue any type of editing or publication after you complete this draft. Okay, so let's dive into the tips. My first tip is don't sweat the small things. If you're getting hung up on trying to decide if your protagonist's name is Aaron or Andrew, just pick one for now and move on. You can always come back to that name and make your final decision at a later point in time. Word even has this functionality where you can replace all instances of a name with just a couple clicks, so it's really easy to change later on. Similarly, don't worry too much about formatting. It doesn't really matter right now if you have chapter breaks or if you just use line breaks between your scenes. That's another thing that you can go back into the manuscript and edit down the line if you change your mind. If you find yourself getting hung up on some element of your novel, step back and ask yourself, does this element really affect the overall story? In the case of a character name or a chapter heading, the answer is no. So use that tool to check yourself if you find you're getting stuck in a rut. My second tip is to make sure that you balance character development with plot development. When you're completing an intense writing challenge like NaNoWriMo, it can be tempting to want to get every plot development down on the page as quickly as possible. And some of you may even be working from an outline where you know exactly what events are going to happen in the novel chronologically. But the best written novels will balance consistent and steady plot development with really strong character development that builds over the course of the novel. So don't forget to invest time and energy into those more quiet scenes where you're really showcasing your characters and their motivations, desires, and fears. I personally am a reader who gets extremely invested in the characters in a novel. And if a novel has a really intriguing and fast-paced plot, but doesn't really pay that much attention to the characters themselves, that's not going to be a story that I find myself particularly interested in. So yes, take a day to write that conflict scene where the major twist in your novel is revealed. But then the next day, take time to write a more introspective scene where your characters are all grappling with the ramifications of that twist. Don't just move on to the next plot development or event. Really spend some time getting into the heads of your characters and showing the reader what they're thinking and feeling at each pivotal moment. This is just as important as getting every turn in the plot on the page. My third tip relates to how much or how little self-editing you should be doing as you write during this month. My opinion is that you should read back over your existing work as you continue to build your manuscript, if that's a part of your process, of course, but you should not waste valuable time and energy doing a complete proofread at this point. If you're a perfectionist like me, this might be really hard for you. As an editor, my eyes are trained to catch each and every tiny typo or misplaced comma. But when it comes to NaNoWriMo, time is everything, and your time is limited. So you really have to think critically about where that time is best spent. The truth of the matter is that there's going to be plenty of time to go back through your manuscript with a fine-tooth comb, and you may even employ a professional editor to help you polish up your draft after you finish it. So fixing typos and making sure every single sentence is impeccably grammatically correct shouldn't be your priority at this point. Instead, use this time to get your words on the page. and make sure you have a fully fleshed out narrative that reflects the story that's been living in your head. My fourth tip relates to a mistake I commonly see writers make in the first drafts of novels. If you aren't working from an outline, that's totally fine, but this approach makes it more likely that your plot is going to go off the rails, particularly as you approach the second half of the manuscript. It's something that I frequently see when I'm evaluating early drafts of novel manuscripts. The first half of the novel will be completely cohesive and will develop at a smooth and steady rate. But then halfway through, everything changes and maybe a new character is introduced or something that had never been mentioned before in the novel suddenly becomes a major focus. Perhaps a twist is revealed that feels like it kind of came out of nowhere. This can create a structural issue with your manuscript. It can certainly be fixed during editing down the line, but it'll frankly take a lot of work to fix. So my tip here is to avoid throwing these plot curveballs altogether. If you feel like your plot is going in a different direction than you originally had in mind, maybe it's time to take a step back and rethink how you want to shape the narrative. Perhaps in some cases it makes sense to go back to some of those earlier sections that you've already written and adjust them so that they match the direction that your narrative is now going. For example, if you realize halfway through your novel that you want to incorporate this new character, maybe plant a couple of scenes earlier in the manuscript where that character shows up so that the reader is already introduced to them. This will ultimately help make sure that your novel feels cohesive and doesn't seem like it was pieced together quickly and sloppily. My last tip relates to another thing that you shouldn't let stress you out too much during NaNoWriMo. Don't worry too much about publishing, if that's a goal for you after your novel is completed. Publishing can be a really intimidating journey. And particularly if you're looking to go the traditional route where you query literary agents in the hopes that they will accept you as a client and present your novel to big publishing houses. It's actually one of my greatest passions to help writers navigate the traditional publishing process. So if that's something you're interested in, come back to my channel after NaNoWriMo is over and check out my videos on how to write a strong query letter and what the process actually looks like to get published by a Big 5 house. But during this month, I recommend not thinking too much about publishing. Don't worry about how your novel is going to fit into the current book market, or if it is strong enough to attract an agent or a publisher. Again, these are all things that you can revisit after the draft is written, but they should not stress you out or hold you up from getting your words down on the page. Publishing may continue to be in the back of your mind, and it may be one of the motivating factors that made you commit to NaNoWriMo to begin with. That is completely fine. But if the thought of publishing starts to make you feel anxious or it starts to deteriorate your motivation or your self-confidence, that is when you really need to shift your focus. Try to get your mind back to the joy of writing itself and the satisfaction that you'll enjoy from getting your story written. What I hate to see is when writers become creatively stifled because they are so worried about if their novel will ever get published. That frankly sucks all of the excitement and fun out of the novel writing process, and it can mean that you aren't producing at your full potential. So do what you can to keep your eyes set on completing the manuscript. Because after all, you can't even begin to start thinking about publishing without first having a completed draft of your novel. Those are the tips that I have for writers who are completing NaNoWriMo this year. I really hope it was helpful for you to hear a book editor's perspective on this awesome initiative. And I just want to end with some words of encouragement because again, even if your month doesn't go exactly according to plan, it is seriously still a huge achievement. The fact that you care enough about your writing to take this time to dedicate to it is extremely admirable, and you should be proud of yourself just for that. I truly am wishing you the best on this month-long journey and hope that you are able to tell the story that you've been dreaming of. Let me know in the comments below if you are embarking on NaNoWriMo this year. If you are, I would love to hear more about what you're looking to accomplish and what your main motivating factor is. If down the line, or if you just need a break from one of your writing sprints, head on over to my channel and check out my other videos. I have videos with writing tips as well as advice on how to go about getting published. I cover everything from how to write better dialogue and how to create more realistic characters to what it actually takes to get published by a Big 5 publishing house. If you like what you see, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and you will get notified every time I post one of my new weekly videos. Thanks so much for watching, best of luck with NaNoWriMo, and happy writing!